Simple slides out, taps away for the Senzu kill, has no idea where 910's at, but now he hears it!
I made a post before the major that bringing in Simple could give FaZe a honeymoon period, and combined with a great bracket, the fact that Vitality have a nightmare run, and Reign's continued excellence in playoffs, FaZe are almost guaranteed to get to the final. But let me tell you why they have a chance to win.
And he keeps going. Soda's safe. Are they doing it? Is there a way back in?
We know how much the mental game matters. The major is the highest pressure tournament that we have in CS, and sometimes teams simply can't handle it. For FaZe, their mental game was totally broken, and they would do the same fate as Falcons unless they made a change before the major, which they did by replacing Brokey with Simple. Changing a player, assuming they fit the team role-wise and are integrated well, can bring about a short-term mental game reset for the team, and this can be used strategically before big tournaments if you're desperate. When this is done right, we call it a honeymoon period, which is when a team overperforms relative to their practice level in the first couple of months after a roster change. If there are fundamental problems that cause the last roster to fail, they could still exist, but we get to bypass that during that honeymoon period. But getting to that honeymoon period in this particular case, given Simple's long absence, coming back into a major with no preparation with the team is incredibly difficult, and the pressure on him as an individual is so high.
And I'm so glad that we managed to go through next stage. Now everything's refreshed. Now it's like new chapter, because I had so much pressure, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that was really important for me, just to go through next stage. That's our like minimum goal. And when we lost to Legacy, and after yesterday we lost to 3D Max, I was a bit lost, and I feel like we were just mentally lost after a Legacy game.
And as we know, they managed to actually push through all of the pressure as a team, supporting one another to make sure that they have enough momentum to get to the playoffs. There's more to it than that though for FaZe. Elige gets a buff, because when FaZe replaced Rops with Elige initially, you were changing out a defensive rifler for an aggressive one, creating role issues. Adding Simple seems to have created a legitimate role improvement, as Simple is a more aggressive and communicative player than Brokey, and changes the dynamics in the server completely, and this really allows Elige to find more synergy with his aggressive and inherently dynamic playstyle as well. So what does this all mean? It means that FaZe have a higher ceiling because of better role adaptation. Additionally, if Simple can hit the highs he had in CSGO, FaZe suddenly become a legit contender for the trophy. But is Simple even hitting those highs? So far, it feels like he's on track. Simple's calling and support play has been excellent so far in this tournament. His clutch AWP and rifle play have absolutely been felt on the server against the best competition like Mouse and the Mongolz. And to prove all of this, he's a top 5 rated player at the end of Stage 3 alongside other players like Zywoo, Donk and Shiro. Practically speaking, we've seen FaZe's results improve every day at the major so far as Simple and the team pick up more confidence together. FaZe are the only trophy contending team that have a fresh lineup, which means it's harder to anti-strat them or even really understand their map pool compared with the other teams. This is their first tournament together, as at IEM Dallas, that tournament excluded Reign from the roster. The team chemistry is also at an all-time high. We already know that Simple and Reign had a relationship that goes far back, but we're also seeing the chemistry with the rest of the team on camera as well, and Elige confirms it in his interview.
Super hard. The aura of the team's incredible. Everyone's going crazy. This major's been so fun so far. Everyone's just yelling at each other back and forth. We'll have less of that.
Why is the chemistry important? I mean, good team chemistry offsets pressure pretty heavily, because much like how pressure dials up our nervous system, good team chemistry actually keeps players calmer and more resilient when that heat is on. I wrote an article about this a while ago, and I found that this is absolutely a necessity for any championship winning team. The true test has been seen for this in comeback games like the ancient match against Mongolz or the ancient game against Mouse, where FaZe had to pass that test of grit to get the win, and they did so really effectively. The best of 3 final also helps FaZe a lot. In a world of MR12, TOs have set the standard of best of 5 finals, but despite this, Valve are reluctant to adopt this in the majors. The best of 3 final in Austin prevents Vitality from exploiting the likely gaps that FaZe has in their map pool as a fresh roster. Lastly, there is precedent for every FaZe player to play better once they reach the playoffs. and this has been especially true for players like Rain. In his career, he's managed to deliver time and again in the biggest moments when there's maximum pressure, and it tends to be the difficulty for FaZe historically is getting out of those group phases and getting into the stage matches where the players can really be elevated by the pressure that you get when playing on stage in front of the crowd. So there's a lot of extra things that we could talk about with FaZe. Frozen playing really well. Elige, as I said, I think gets a buff here. Karrigan seems to be working even harder than ever. Obviously, they were in such a bad position, and there's something to be said for that too, where for months and months, you've got players like Elige and Karrigan and Frozen and Rain just in the doldrums because they were unable to get the team clicking, and it's actually clicking here at the major. And so there is that extra kind of rebound where everyone is revitalized because of what they've been able to show on the server and the synergy that has been happening. And so all of these factors, I feel like, will cover up for the fact that they're not going to have the best map pool ever, because they only have to worry about best of 3. It's not a best of 5 final. They've got the ability to also cover up for some of the mistakes in the Counter-Strike that they may make, being a fresher roster, with just having incredible clutch power on the playoff stage, because all of these players have that level in them where they can be massively elevated by the stage, and even if they make some mistakes, they have great team chemistry so that nobody's going to be getting quiet, no one's going to be falling into the mental hole. They're going to instead be able to play through them and still keep the clutches going, and that is really what determines who ultimately is going to win a playoff at this level, is who is better at clutching, because typically teams will have a good enough game plan, good enough basics that they'll be able to get into contested rounds, and in those contested rounds it then comes down to the clutch factor. And right now you're looking at a FaZe lineup that is full of clutch factor, and that's something that we've seen get them to the playoffs. So with all of that said, I definitely think FaZe are in for a great shot at a finals run where they can actually win, and I hope that we get to see it because it would be epic.